LPC intern, which is a licensed professional counselor, Liz Cater. She's right back there. She'll be out there as well. Those are just some resources. After the presentation, you're more welcome to visit with. I want to introduce our guest speakers first this evening. We have, first they'll go in just a second, but Dr. Timothy Grigsby, who is right here in the front. Got two Dr. Holcombs. Dr. Richard Holcomb and Dr. Michelle Holcomb. And then we have Officer Walk from the Boerne PD. Officer Walk also works as what's called an SRO, which is a Student Resource Officer within all of our schools. I think it kind of floats around from campus to campus. We have a full-time SRO on all of our secondary campuses. Is that correct, Officer Walk? And Officer Muth is ours, and it's great. And then the assistant principals here at Boerne High School, Mr. Shane Wilson, Mr. Jake Prince is walking away, and all the way in the back working the computer, Mr. Jeff Klaus. And we have our school nurse, Ms. Carol Gish. So I think I pretty much hit everybody, is that correct? And so we're going to break this presentation up tonight into 5 different presentations, each covering a different aspect. There may be some overlap between the presentations, but our goal tonight is to provide you and empower you with information on not just what to look for as far as these types of things, but signs of withdrawals, to let you, especially the young people in here, know what the effects on your body these substances have in a negative way, and just the health-related aspects and addiction and what that looks like. What started this conversation, to have this presentation this evening, and we haven't had this with kids yet. We're going to have this tonight, and then we'll probably come back in the fall and have with all the students here at Boerne High School. If the other campuses want to follow suit, and if our presenters are available, we'll certainly make that happen, or have some kind of presentation to help educate them. But the conversation started. I had a parent here at Boerne High School tell me that they'd spent almost $350 on Nicorette gum trying to get their child off of nicotine because they were vaping. And in products that are out there, they're talking about nicotine products, coffee, and even marijuana. All those things are so much stronger in their potency than they were when I was at school in the 90s. Starbucks coffee is almost 900% stronger than the average cup of coffee as far as the caffeine. One cartridge of these vapes is equal to a pack of cigarettes. Some of the marijuana that they have now, and these devices, by the way, you don't know what's in the oil. It could be nicotine, it could be THC, which is a chemical that's in marijuana. It could be anything. You can liquefy anything. They could put heroin in these things if they want to, methamphetamine. We have no idea what's in the oil unless we test it, and are testing kids. And sometimes there's nothing in it but just the scent and the flavor, but they're still putting chemicals in the body. So at no time vaping anything is healthy for your body, and hopefully that we can explain all those aspects this evening. There's a substance called dab. It is a mud-like, tarry substance that students are buying. It's marijuana. They can stick it on the heating elements of these products and smoke marijuana that way. And there's all kinds of ways and nefarious types of activity that can be used with these products. So thank you for coming tonight. It's a very important issue. This is an epidemic in our country. And the head of the FDA, which I think probably has just a couple of days or weeks left, was championing this cause of adolescent use of vaping and asking these companies to present a plan on how they're going to keep it out of teenagers' hands. With him leaving, I don't know what's going to happen with that, but something needs to be done. about these products because it's hurting our children. And they have, I've heard stories of children not being able to sleep at night, having night terrors, throwing up, very aggressive verbally towards parents and their peers because they're coming down off the withdrawal of these products. At any rate, that's what the presentation's for. I'm not here to tell about that. I'm going to introduce Dr. Timothy Grisby. He's currently an assistant professor of community health. He received his PhD in preventive medicine with an emphasis in health behavior research from the University of Southern California. He completed his BA in psychology and social behavior at the University of California, Irvine. Additionally, he's worked as a research analyst for the Institutional Review Board at the University of California, Irvine. Dr. Grisby works extensively in substance misuse and related negative behaviors. His primary research interest is the conceptualization, measurement, and prevention of substance misuse in adolescent and young adult populations. He's also interested in the underlying factors that promote concurrent substance misuse and other negative health behaviors. Dr. Griffin.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. Can you hear me in the back? Is this okay? There's a little bit of feedback. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what to look for in your teens if you suspect that they're vaping or you're just generally worried about substance use behaviors. And afterwards, I'm more than happy, I'll be staying around afterwards. If you have some specific questions for me, of course, I'll be more than happy to take them and talk to you about some of the patterns and trends we've seen in the data and what to look for specifically if you're suspecting some issues with your own teen. So before I start jumping into some of the elements that are leading parents to want to question their teens about potential e-cig use or cigarette use, I thought I'd show you some data and give you an idea of sort of the mindset of the everyday person who's using e-cigs. So what we see here is some data from a study called Monitoring the Future Report. This is collected data on adolescent substance use from 1975 until the present. And the reason I'm bringing this graph is that as of 2013, we saw this really interesting shift in the trends of substance use. Alcohol continues to be the most prevalently used substance amongst adolescents. So they're this is the drug that most teens are reporting that they have ever tried or that they're currently using. But for cigarettes, which is the black line there, and marijuana, which is the blue line, we had this sudden reversal around 2010. And this is something we saw with both teens and young adults. Something really interesting was happening in the sort of zeitgeist of this era, being that we really sort of beat it home over the last 3 decades that cigarettes are bad for you. So people are moving away from cigarettes. They know they're bad, they know that it's bad to smoke around other people, it's bad to have residue on your clothes. We've really stigmatized this to the point where people don't want to smoke or be seen smoking. So as a result, people sort of abandoned smoking, but marijuana has gone back up. And as you know, nationally, the perceptions of marijuana, the risk perceptions has gone down. So now that we see marijuana is safer, marijuana prevalence is growing. Simultaneously, at the same time, the cigarette use is going down. In 2007, this new product hits the market formerly called e-cigs, right? The e-cigarette. It's touted as a harm reduction device, so the goal is to try and market this as a device to help people stop smoking, similar to nicotine gum, nicotine lozenges, and other such nicotine replacement therapy products. Unfortunately, though, the sort of message got out that this is safer than smoking and was taken really as it's safe to do. Right? So people were sort of saying, well, I guess it's not smoking, so it's safe, and I can still get nicotine this way. To make matters worse, and we'll see if you get a chance to come look at some of the products we're looking at that Boerne High School administrators bring tonight. You'll see some of the cartridges that are here. These are also flavored cartridges. So these are cartridges that don't just deliver nicotine, but they deliver a flavor. A lot of those flavors that are out there, if you go out and look them up, you'll find that these are not flavors that a typical adult may be seeking, right? They're things like bubblegum, right, kind of flavors, or cotton candy. There's even one I saw a while ago, I think it was like dragon's blood or unicorn blood, right? These sort of weird things that parents and adults are not looking for, but kids would be very probably drawn to. At the same time now, we see that cigarette use is going down, e-cigs are spiking tremendously. Every year we're seeing a 50% or more increase in e-cigs amongst adolescents, both at middle school and high school age. So, in terms of looking at your own children, trying to figure out, well, is my kid perhaps dealing with substances. There are some telltale signs from data, right, so from peer-reviewed research over the last several decades that indicate that kids may be involved in substances. So I brought a couple of those for you here. So this is not just for e-cigs, but just in general substance use behavior amongst teens. The first one there, if your kids are going through these sort of transitions between friends or groups of friends. So if you're starting to hear a lot of new names that you've never heard before, they're changing friends very often, this is typically a sign that they are engaging in some sort of behavior that their old friends, right, their old peer group may not approve of, or that they may not be engaging with. There may also be some secret meetings or hush conversations, so they're taking the phone calls and they're taking them secretly. They don't want to tell you who they're talking to, what they're talking about. If that's not normal for your kid, that's a sign. Of course, right, sometimes teenagers just don't want you to know who's talking to them. So if this is something that's a general pattern, I would not take it as suspect, but they're more than willing to take a call from their friend in front of you, and all of a sudden they're asking to leave the room, they're whispering on the phone. This is a sign that something aberrant, something unconventional that they're doing that could indicate that they're engaging in some sort of behavior they don't want you to know about. If there's missing money or belongings, that's usually a telltale sign, right? So if they're taking money or taking belongings, or all of a sudden things are getting lost, very expensive items are getting lost, this is a sign that perhaps things are being sold, right? Money's being taken to buy substance abuse, substance products, and paraphernalia. A decreased interest in usual activities is another good sign. So if all of a sudden your very active child does not want to be active, they don't like to spend time with the family, they don't want to go out with their friends, that's usually a sign that they are maybe are in the process of addiction. If you have a lot of personal time that is unaccounted for, so if they're supposed to be home at 3:45 or 4 o'clock, but they're not getting home until 4:30, again, a sign, and they can't explain to you why it's taking so long, that's another good sign that something's happening. Unexplained changes in mood and personality. This is typically what we'll see during that withdrawal phase, and I won't get into all the signs of nicotine withdrawal. I do recommend if you go onto a site like WebMD, they have some great lists of symptoms of nicotine withdrawal. But typically you'll see sort of this more irritable, grumpy, sort of what you might feel like when a cup of coffee's worn off and you have a lot of work left to do in the day. If you see that kind of behavior, that's usually somebody coming off of nicotine, especially if they're taking in a lot of nicotine. When it comes to e-cigs in particular, as mentioned before, e-cigs deliver a very high dose of nicotine. So traditionally, a student would have to smoke a whole cigarette to get essentially one puff of an e-cig. So one puff equates, for the average user, to about 1 cigarette's worth of nicotine. And kids aren't just taking one puff, they're taking multiple puffs. And that's the equivalent of smoking multiple cigarettes in terms of nicotine doses. So they're getting a very high amount of nicotine doses. So we're seeing much more rapid drops in terms of withdrawal symptoms. Also, if they're constantly changing their clothes, brushing their teeth, chewing gum, trying to mask the scent of e-cigs, and I'll mention e-cigs don't have that traditional tobacco smell. They actually produce more of a sweet smell. It is very faint, but if they have a sort of sweet smell to them, you can't really pinpoint what it is, and they can't explain what it is. That's another good sign that perhaps they're using one of these products. So it's also good to know what these products look like. So these are just a couple of images from the CDC. And one of them is that dissects the e-cig for you there. That comes from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. They come in many shapes and forms, so recognizing what they look like is a great first step to knowing what you're dealing with. The one that really is worth right now is this Juul product, so it's this one here. It looks like a flash drive, so they can put this in their backpack along with their other flash drives, and you may not be any the wiser of what they're actually carrying on them. It also charges through a USB port, so again, it looks just like a USB drive is plugged into their computer, plugged into the wall. In fact, that will be in these direct. So. Just a heads up, it's good to take some time to go online, image search some of these products. I'll mention this one here, it looks like a compact. This is the first time I've seen this one. I actually have not seen this one before. So they're constantly changing and evolving. So keep up with what they look like. So that way when you see them in their bags or on the table at home, you know what it is that you see. So the other way to know what you're dealing with here is also to be very familiar with the vernacular that kids are using. I'll mention only old people like myself and us parents, I'm a parent as well, is that we say the word vaping. We talk about kids vaping. They don't say vaping, they say juuling. Right, so this is a much more common term. Or they may say something like that for puffing from students nowadays. Anyone know what a Juul room is? Someone heard that term before? I'll throw that out there. So a Juul room is actually a school bathroom. That's the Juul room. So you can actually look on Twitter. If you go on Twitter, and I'm learning Twitter myself, I'm a little old, But if you go on and type in hashtag Juul room, you can actually find some posts about kids posting, talking about using Juul in the bathroom at school. That's specifically what they're talking about. It's going to the school bathroom, going to the Juul room to vape. So knowing what they're saying is really important so that you don't miss, right, the message that they're going to be given on the phone or to their friends or on social media. And I'll talk about social media too in just a minute. In the case of some signs, what to look for in a kid physically and behaviorally, we do see that kids who vape tend to have an increased thirst. The reason for this is that vaping actually dehydrates you. It does dehydrate the body. As a result, they may want to drink more. You will see some irritation in the eyes, so red eyes, itchy eyes, dry skin. Nosebleeds are possible at times. There's also a condition called vapor's tongue. This is when people who use specifically the flavored products will damage the sensory organ, the senses on the tongue, and they will have a problem with taste. So they may need to add extra salt or look for something very sweet. So if you notice all of a sudden that it says they can't taste their food, they can't taste what they're eating, this could be a sign of some damage to their tongue. Also find unfamiliar sort of USB drives, batteries, chargers. I have some pictures up here. We have some products up here. If you see something that doesn't belong to any of the products you own, that's again another telltale sign that you open up a conversation about what that product is, where it came from, and what your children are doing with it. There are some less common effects that are due to e-cigs, including acne breakouts and pneumonia amongst those who are heavy vapors. So if you have a child who's taking in really deep inhaling the e-cigs, so when they take a deep breath and they hold it like this, right, and they hold it in their lungs as long as possible, there's a higher risk of pneumonia in some cases. It's not very common, but it does show up amongst heavier users. So in terms of what you can do, and I brought a little message from social media if you want to read that really quickly, we'll talk about it. The best thing you can do with your kid is talking, right? So having a conversation, staying engaged with your child, knowing where they are, what they're doing, without being too intrusive, that's always the hard part as a parent. But having defined expectations and rules about e-cigs, being consistent with the discipline. What we've seen in some of the research so far is that children who don't believe their parents will actually carry through with discipline are more likely to take the risk. Right? So as long as you set a rule or an expectation, you meet those expectations with some sort of punishment and keep consistent, then you will be better off on the run. Talking about the risks of e-cig use and recognizing misinformation is really important as well. Unfortunately, kids are not great judges of information. They don't know what to look for in credible information. They will look at a tweet online and judge that as credible as a textbook in some cases. When we ask kids how many people their age are juuling or drinking, they will constantly overestimate the number of kids that engage in these behaviors because they perceive it as normal. It's normal for them because it's normal in their social circles. So we need to break through some of those barriers and let them know that it is not a common behavior, that it is a risky behavior, and that by doing it, they're going to experience some consequences that could be long-lasting throughout the lifespan. So also teaching them how to deal with stress, how to effectively say no is really great. Ever remember the Just Say No campaign, Nancy Reagan? Is that effective? Does that work? Goodness, no, it doesn't work, right? So when kids go up and they just say no, that has its own unique set of consequences. So teaching kids how to actually say no, to have the confidence and the resilience to deal with the stress of saying no is really important. So we have to work with our kids. Sakata does some really great education with students to help them do this through a program called Keeping It Real. So this is a good program we have for students already in the schools. But working that, bolstering that at home, letting them know that you support them in their decisions, that you will back them up, is really important for them to make those decisions. Also monitoring social media use. We are finding, again, a lot of trends that we used to see with alcohol now moving to e-cigarettes, where kids are talking about e-cigarettes with their peers through social media. So ask your kids if you can be a friend. I know that sounds really horrible and it sounds horrible to your kid, but be their friend, be incognito, don't be intrusive about it. Just create a profile so you can monitor what's happening in their social circles, ask them for their passwords, see if they're comfortable doing this with you, let them know it's for their benefit, not for your benefit, because there are more risks than just these things. There's other things like cyberbullying that happen through social media. There are also social media monitoring apps that are out there. There's one called Bark that's really popular now, where it will actually send you a message if there's anything. It'll send you a risk warning if there's something posted in your kid's profile that deals with things like substance use, bullying, sexual advances by a potential child predator, and so on. So here for you, I just brought a little social media message. This was a post by a student I just pulled this offline today, so it was posted March 16th. You can't read in the back. It says, I just waited to get in this bathroom for so long that now I just want to loiter and chill in this nice bathroom, LOL. And then hashtag Julian, hashtag don't knock, hashtag I'll be a while. So we know when we see kids talking about this online, I didn't put anything, I pulled it right when I found it on Twitter. So nobody had liked it or retweeted it yet, thank goodness. But this is something that's happening online. Kids are talking about this online, and there is information online for students who are engaged in this as well. The good thing is that there is also really good health information online. The CDC, the FDA post a lot of things through Twitter trying to reach youth. So look at those things, share those with your children, and if you want some more information on that, I'm more than happy to share it with you. I also wanted to throw a shout out to a local group that I work with, the Boerne Coalition of Resources for Resilience. They have a Facebook page. They have a terrific list of local resources. So if your child or you as a family are dealing with stress, substance use problems, mental health issues, they have a terrific list of references. Dr. Leanne Greenberg, who's a local pharmacist, chairs this coalition, and they put together some really fantastic things. So please check out their Facebook page if you get a chance, and if you want some more resources on local treatment, prevention, and other health education information, that's a great place to start for some local health. All right, folks, that's it for me. I'll turn it over to our next speaker now. Thank you very much. And I'll be around afterwards if you guys want.
Thank you, Dr. Grisby. Go ahead and have a minute to switch presentations. I'll introduce our next guest speaker, Dr. Richard Holcomb. The native Texan is a graduate of the University of Texas Health Science Center, Houston. He completed his residency in pediatric medicine at the University of Texas Health Science Center, San Antonio, as well as fellowship in sports medicine. He is a board-certified pediatrician by the American Board of Pediatrics and maintains a certificate of added qualification in sports medicine by the American Academy of Family Practice. Dr. Holcomb is a proud owner of Holcomb Pediatrics and Sports Medicine in Boerne, Texas. In addition, he is the medical director of athletic medicine at the University of Texas San Antonio and is the primary team doctor for their athletic program. He's also our very own team doctor for here in Boerne ISD. Our athletic program. His research interests include post-concussive syndrome, the development of substance disorders in injured athletes, and the long-term consequences of sports participation in college and professional athletics. Dr. Holcomb is an active member of the Bexar County Medical Society, Council of Pediatric Sports Medicine of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American College of Sports Medicine. Dr. Richard Holcomb.
Okay. Hello, good evening. That pretty much said most about me. I think my wife made most of that up. I don't remember half of that actually happened in my life. But a lot of what I was going to say, he kind of covered a lot of it. So, but we'll just kind of go through it. I was going to take the first couple objectives here, as I have the benefit of being married to a person that knows way more about most things than I do. So she's going to tackle a lot of the, I guess, the mental health aspects of the behavior of vaping and juuling and all that. I was going to basically talk a little bit about, how it came about, the kind of difference between our traditional cigarettes and the actual e-cigarettes. In a lot of the literature, if you're reading about e-cigarettes, you're going to see a terminology called ENS, electronic nicotine device systems. So the reason they kind of use that is because over time they've kind of morphed from this traditional electronic cigarette that was actually trying to look like a real cigarette to things that are now very much disguised, as you can see up here. And then, of course, I was going to talk a little bit about, obviously, the physical effects of using the ENS devices, as well as I'll talk briefly about some of the, I guess, sports concerns or athletic participation. So this is kind of, this is your typical, we're all pretty aware of the Marlboro man there, who was smoking cigarettes. And kind of as the previous speaker was saying, probably over the last decade, there became this big kind of smoking became uncool. I think the tobacco companies finally got kind of trapped into having to say that, oh God, yes, this does cause problems. It causes health problems. And not only does it cause cancer, but we actually put stuff in the cigarettes to addict everybody so that you would continue to buy this. for years and years. And, they basically kind of threw that out there, apologized, paid a bunch of money, and then came up with a new system in order to hook everyone again. So now you had all these nicotine-addicted adults out there that needed some sort of system to smoke, but yet they couldn't smoke anywhere because it was pretty uncool to smoke at restaurants and bars and everywhere that they normally have smoked. So this new system came around. And initially, if you want to, look at the companies, they, in their defense, they actually came out with a little e-cigarette that, had a little LED light on the end that looked like when you puffed into it, it actually lit up like you were smoking, and it made a little sort of vapor or something. And it was actually painted white and brown, kind of like a typical cigarette. And the theory behind it was that, the tobacco company said that this is definitely a safer alternative, and it's got to be healthier because it doesn't have all the carbon monoxide, the tobacco tar, all the things that we know were carcinogenic. A quick Google search will tell you that in a typical cigarette, they list anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 different chemical compounds and at least 70 known carcinogens in a typical cigarette. Well, this new nicotine delivery system and the vape pens and whatnot, they basically say, well, we're much healthier. We only put propylene glycol, which is like vegetable oil. We put some flavorings. We put some nicotine, and some other stuff. So a lot of it just classifies as other stuff. Well, depends on where you look. You can find anywhere from 300 to 600 chemicals that no one can know what they are. Just a couple of them that do catch people's eyes is there's something called diethylene glycol. That's basically what's in antifreeze. I can tell you if you drink a lot of antifreeze, it's probably not a good thing. It pickles your kidney, causes brain damage. Antifreeze, it adds like a diethylene glycol. Glycol is a sugar thing, so it makes it kind of sweet. That was the sweetness that you were pertaining to. I kind of can tell you that my father was a veterinarian, so one of the most common things we would end up responding to on weekends and stuff would be pets and animals that had drinking antifreeze, because back in the day, people actually used to change their own oil and antifreeze and would leave it in a pan. It's very sweet. Pets like to drink it. And I've seen lots of cats and dogs that drink antifreeze. I'm not so sure there's many scientific studies of humans drinking a lot of antifreeze, but it didn't look good in cats and dogs, so I can't imagine that years of smoking these things would be good. The other thing that's been found in vape pens and whatnot is nitrosamines. Nitrosamines is a very common carcinogenic agent. So there is carcinogenic agents in it. So the statement by the tobacco companies that these things would be healthier, safer alternatives they would provide, because they didn't have the tobacco tar, they didn't have the carbon monoxide, and then you didn't have to worry about secondhand smoke, because that really wasn't going to be a problem as traditional cigarettes. Well, there's actually some studies now, lots of animal studies that are showing that the secondhand effects of the vape may not be as safe as we believe. Of course, in the medical literature, there's not a whole lot of articles out there yet. Scholarly articles, I guess, if you throw out all the ones that are kind of skewed and stuff, when you come down to scholarly articles, there's not a whole lot. I mean, this vaping and juuling has only been around for the last, 10 years or so. And juuling, not even that long. He kind of went over it. There's all these things that are up here. It's kind of like, they talk about it in, first generation through the last generation, which are now these Juuls and whatnot. This is the newest generation. I think it's interesting that they started off looking like a cigarette, and now, obviously, with the idea that it was for people that had been smoking 2 or 3 packs a day, and so, that typical Marlboro Man cowboy that was coming off of nicotine, yes, he's going to obviously gravitate towards, wacky watermelon as his new flavor of choice, or grape, or I've seen tango mangoes and coconut limes and all kinds of, weird flavors, kind of what you were alluding to, which is, kind of comical that that's the flavoring that they choose for that. So obviously, we've seen this before. It was marketing towards young people. It doesn't take long to realize the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Family Physicians, any medical group worth their salt has basically come out against this, saying that this is, they're marketing towards young people. I know you kind of alluded to this, they all kind of work the same, so we don't really need to go over that. Juul, I was going to talk a lot about Juul because that's actually what I deal with young people, so that's what we see the most of. That's what they do. It's got its own lingo, they're juuling, just like you alluded to, so it's a real problem. It's a problem in Boerne. It's not, it's not just in San Antonio. It's out here, it's everywhere. American Academy of Pediatrics, if you throw out some numbers, last year, 2018, I don't know, I think it came out of the Truth Survey or one of those big surveys. It said 21% or something of high school students had used a vape of some sort in the last 30 days. 5% of middle school kids had done it in the last 30 days. That represents, in the high school realm, that was a 75% increase over the last year. In the middle school, that's a 50% increase. So it's rapidly increasing. We also know that because of that, especially in my world, pediatrics, I see a lot of intoxications and toxicities and stuff, that if you look at the data from poison control centers, there's a rapid rise in poison control calls regarding, hey, my kid got a hold of some cartridge thing that's sitting around the house that's basically got nicotine in it. Interestingly, you got to be a physicist to figure out how much nicotine is actually in some of these little pods and cartridges and stuff. The companies are not very good about laying it out there. They're very vague. They kind of say the thing that, one pod equals 1 pack of cigarettes, and, if you do the math, apparently a traditional cigarette has 9 milligrams of nicotine, but you burn off most of it, so you get like a milligram of nicotine when you smoke a cigarette. So you have to smoke a lot of cigarettes over a short period of time in order to get kind of sick from them. And they're probably right in the realm of true traditional cigarettes. The beauty of cigarettes is you can't smoke that many in a row because there's other side effects that kick in. You get nauseous and sick and you're going to stop, and then the cigarette runs out. You only have so many puffs and the thing's gone. So you can only get a milligram. But like you were alluding to, these vape pens are extremely concentrated. People can inhale these things. They can take in massive amounts of nicotine. A good point of reference is on like the Juul, for instance. A Juul pen comes with a pod. It's 0.7 milliliters. That's not even 1 milliliter. A milliliter, for reference, is around 20 to about 30 drops. 30 drops make a milliliter. So this is not even 30 drops of a liquid. They come in 5% concentrations of nicotine and 3% concentrations. The 5% concentration of nicotine is going to have about 40 milligrams of nicotine in that small amount. The 3% one is going to have about 23 milligrams of nicotine. To put that in reference, a lethal dose, if you're a 150-pound person and you want to take a lethal dose of nicotine, you take 50 milligrams of nicotine and it's going to kill you. That's what the literature says. Now, maybe a little higher, but that's a lethal dose. So these things, this is why the FDA and everybody's really involved in this, because kids come around, they see the packaging. If you've seen the packaging of these things, they package them in things that look like candy sometimes. And a little kid downs one of these cartridges, it's a serious problem. So this is kind of what I was alluding to about the percent of people that were actually using it. And then obviously, there's, I'm amazed by how smart kids are. You can't get them to do their math homework, but yet they can figure out how to make their own e-juice and put certain amounts of nicotine in it, and come up with all kinds of marijuana and everything else that they put in it. So it opens up a whole different realm of possibilities. A little bit, since I am a doctor, I have to put some fancy neuron slide up here, but basically, a good kind of trivial pursuit question is that the brain is the last organ that's developed in your body. And it doesn't even fully develop until you're about 25 years old. So, we all know that we've done a lot of stupid stuff before we were 25, and then after that we don't do anything stupid. But so before the age of 25, your brain's still developing. And this is why, not just with nicotine, this is a nicotine example, but lots of things can lead to addiction in the young developing brain. The part of the brain that's responsible for our inhibitions, to say, hey, I probably shouldn't, blurt out a cuss word right now, or, I probably shouldn't take my shirt off or do whatever, is our prefrontal cortex, our frontal lobe. Unfortunately, lots of substances, especially nicotine, love to attack the receptors in the frontal lobe. So, these neurons in the frontal lobe have little nicotine receptors. The more nicotine you give your body, the more receptors are made. So your body keeps seeing more and more nicotine, you make more and more receptors. Then your body needs more and more nicotine in order to trigger these receptors. If you don't provide it with nicotine, then you don't make, the receptors don't kick out a response, so that means you don't release dopamine. Dopamine's the happy chemical. Dopamine's the chemical that releases from our brains when we do fun things and see puppies and little children and stuff like that. That's dopamine. What happens over time is basically what can lead to the addiction of nicotine. Is the more and more nicotine you have, the more receptors that are being laid down. Your body needs more and more nicotine to trigger all these receptors to dump the dopamine, and if you don't, basically it's a cycle. If you don't provide the nicotine, then you don't get the dopamine, and that's where you start getting the withdrawal. You get irritable, you're pissed off at the world, you're getting headaches, you're easily frustrated, you can't pay attention. Basically it looks a lot like an ADHD kid unmedicated, very impulsive, unmedicated ADHD kid. And I deal with this a lot in my office. I deal with people, there's an acute change in a kid's mental health, and everyone comes in, I think they have ADHD. Well, you just don't get ADHD in the 5th grade, it just doesn't, you just don't all of a sudden have ADHD, Last school year, I wasn't an all-A student, and now I have ADHD and I can't do anything. Things change. So, these are the things that we look for when we hear these kinds of stories. Substance abuse, and it's not just nicotine, it can be other stuff, but obviously this is a real common, easily accessible thing. Kind of going back to the Juul, I didn't put some of this on the thing, but going back to the Juul, I think it was interesting. In 2018, which was just in November of 2018, I saw on the Business Channel, they actually had the CEO of Juul. I think his last name's Burns. Anyway, he was responding to the current FDA's, kind of not being pleased with the fact that young people are now being attracted to these devices. And so he actually made kind of made a decision in the right direction. I was going to read a quote that he said. He basically said that the underage use of e-cigs, like Juul, is an unintended and serious problem. We want to be the off-ramp for adult smokers to switch from cigarettes, not an on-ramp for Americans' youth to initiate nicotine. So, it was a good response by him. And so in order to make some improvements in the system, he did do one thing that I think American Academy of Pediatrics has pushed for a long time, is that was get rid of these flavors. Get rid of the flavors that a traditional cigarette smoker is not going to be wanting, wacky watermelon. So I don't know when they started it, but apparently, supposedly he was going to whatever he told them that what he would do is they would no longer supply the flavored nicotine packets to the brick and mortar stores, which means the only ones that you get at Walmart, Target, places like that would be the mint flavored one, the tobacco flavored ones, or the menthol flavored ones, and not the ones that are more marketed towards probably the younger generation, or more attracted toward the younger generation. He also decided that when you bought them online, that there would have to be 2 forms of identification, basically making sure that you were 21 years of age to purchase them online. And so that opens up a whole other can of worms, because it's very easy for kids to go online to buy these things. I was Googling around last night, just curiosity on different websites, and basically all there was pop-ups lots of times that said, "Are you 21 years old?" Oh, yes. Are you 18 years old? Oh, yes. and then you were into the website. So, but at least they're making some decisions in the right direction. They did put a limit on how many. Another problem that they were finding was that there was third-party people that were basically buying all this stuff and then selling it to kids, you know, or selling it, you know, Planet K or other places where they weren't asking for, you know, IDs and stuff. And so Juul is one of the first companies that went in, and you have to have a, you know, certain password and an ID, and you can only buy 2 devices per month and 15 pods per month. So at least they put some sort of limit on it. But anyway, I thought that was interesting when it came to Juul. Biological effects of nicotine. I think that's kind of what we're looking at. You know, I mean, obviously the whole e-cigarette concept removed the idea of lung cancer in that sense. So in their minds, they've scratched the idea of lung cancer, and the cigarette tobacco companies are like, okay, now it's not causing lung cancer. Obviously, we don't know that. You're inhaling, you know, 600 various chemicals into your lungs, so nobody's going to know exactly what that's doing to you. We know that it's not good. We know that people have increased risk of asthmas, the pneumonia, as well as we see acute pneumothorax, and that's due to this, I don't know what they actually call that maneuver where you suck it in and hold it for a long time. It leads to better blood absorption, more rapid blood absorption. But that maneuver, when you do that, kids can spontaneously burst part of their lung and get what they call spontaneous pneumothorax. So it leads to acute chest pain, and it's a medical emergency. But the acute effects of nicotine, there's basically the nicotine the fastest way to get nicotine into your body is to inhale it. So even if you eat it, or it goes through a little longer absorption process. The bad thing about eating it or inhaling or taking it in that way is it takes a little slower to get into your system, but it lasts for longer. When you inhale it, it's a little bit more quick on and a little bit more quick off. So, but you can get a way higher amount of it. So, long-term effects that we know of so far with nicotine, because you can actually look back at the nicotine in cigarettes that, look at all the stuff there. It's coronary artery disease, heart attacks, high blood pressure, stroke, delayed wound healing, reproductive toxicity. That basically is a fancy way of saying infertility. And then, of course, all kinds of GI symptoms, ulcers, reflux, things like that. There's essentially no part of your body that it really doesn't affect, over the long haul. Nicotine poisoning, I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. I thought the stats were interesting that the Poison Control Center has seen this big increase, and it was funny about the year they saw it, 2014, 2015, so this is about the onset of the Juul. We started seeing these when these pods became more readily available. They went from 1,500 cases in 2013, and they've had over 3,800 cases in 2014. I think in 2015 they had the same thing. They had about the same number of people calling, asking questions about nicotine liquid ingestion. Because of this, and because of some of the more recent stuff about Juul, there's a rumor, and it's been flashed around some of through the American Academy of Pediatrics, that the FDA may actually go in and eliminate all flavoring, that you can't even produce it or sell it. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. We all know that cigarette companies are huge political monopolies, and so I doubt we're going to see that anytime soon. But they do have the ability to do it. I think it was 2009, Obama actually passed a legislation, which was kind of funny because he's actually a smoker. Obama's actually a smoker, but he passed a legislation policy that was the Family Tobacco Prevention and Regulation Act or something, legislation of 2009. So he actually, this allowed the FDA to basically oversee tobacco companies and put limits on them. So this may actually be within the legal realms to do this, but we'll see. So whenever you ingest nicotine, if you ingest toxic levels of it very quickly, you typically have the effects. in medical school, well, I'm not very smart. I have dyslexia, so I always have to learn everything in acronyms. And so one of the acronyms that we learned about toxic ingestions like this are called SLUDS. There's a SLUDS effects, S-L-U-D-S. So you salivate, lacrimate, urinate, defecate, and you sweat. So it's kind of like everything just kind of starts to melt down. So if you think about that, everything in your body just starts dripping out and rolling out. That's kind of when you acutely are intoxicated with it. And then there's the secondary effect, which is the late effect, which is basically SLUDS leads into death, which basically means then your heart rate starts to slow, you start to go into a coma, you start having seizures, you stop breathing, and you can die. So that's kind of the more late-term effects, is the bad stuff. So it kind of starts as a stimulatory effect, and then it ends with a depressor effect. Michelle was going to talk about some mental health stuff, but I think it's, from a sports point of view, I mean, I didn't really put a lot up there about sports performance because I don't think I'm going to convince anybody that, there's not any elite athletes that are sitting around smoking, 2 or 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Believe it or not, when you look at the science of vaping and athletes, then you're just looking at the nicotine. Nicotine, unfortunately, may, in very small, controlled amounts, may actually have some performance-enhancing abilities. So, the organization that controls all that is the World Doping Organization. They're the system that oversees all the Olympic athletes, and that's why if you have asthma and you're an Olympic athlete, you can't take your inhaler the night before a swimming event, or you will be disqualified. It's better off you just die than take your inhaler. You can't do it. It's a performance-enhancing substance. If you're a shooter in the Olympics, you shoot a rifle or something, and you take a beta blocker for blood pressure, you can't participate. It's considered a performance enhancer. It slows your heart rate, and we know that athletes are able to slow their heart rate, and then it allows for decreased movement when they shoot their guns. So the World Doping Agency has a lot of, they're trying to keep up with the technology of this stuff. It's always very hard. I mean, we all know the story of Lance Armstrong and how hard it was to find out what he was doing. They actually never could catch him doing it, even though he admittedly did it. He doped. So as far as nicotine is concerned, they've looked at it. They can't find that there's any true scientific evidence to say that it's extremely beneficial, and they can't find any true scientific evidence to say that it's actually very harmful for athletes. So that's kind of where they are now. There's been, if you go through, I actually did a literature search through the scholarly literature of athletic performance and nicotine, and if you throw out all the articles that, weren't English, and all the articles that were basically very biased, there's only been about 10 articles looking at nicotine in athletes, and 2 of them kind of supported that small amounts of nicotine given in the form of a transdermal patch may actually provide a little bit of performance enhancement in an endurance athlete, if you're riding a stationary bicycle, basically. So that's kind of where we are on nicotine. And I always tell people, when you hear something like that, you can also know that that's about the way most of us know athletes that take creatine. It's very common. You go buy it at GNC. Have lots of athletes that swear you take a lot of creatine powder that you're going to be stronger, bigger, faster, quicker, the whole 9. The science behind that has shown basically the same exact thing, that if you are a cyclist that rides that weird looking bicycle around that big thing in the Olympics that it's like a dome, that you might have a little bit better endurance if you take creatine. That's the only scientific study that was ever done on creatine. So some of these things just get put out there and we don't really know the exact facts behind it. I obviously would never encourage any athlete to smoke or vape or anything else like that. But I can tell you, anecdotally, as a physician for UTSA and dealing with college athletes, lots of athletes, the 2 most common psychoactive substances in the world are caffeine and nicotine. They're by far the most commonly used psychoactive substances. Athletes use nicotine, and they use lots of caffeine. Caffeine is illegal. You can get banned from the NCAA if you test positive for high amounts of caffeine. It is a banned substance. They don't typically look for it, but they can if they want to. It's a banned substance. Nicotine, the NCAA does not test for it. They can't test. They haven't been able to test for it. They banned it unofficially. You can't chew chewing tobacco at baseball games. You can't use it on the campuses and the premises of sporting events. It's banned in that way. But as far as a performance enhancer, again, I will tell you, athletes will say nicotine in small amounts. They claim that it helps them focus, it helps them concentrate, it helps them not be as nervous, take the edge off. And the number one thing it does for athletes is it helps them keep their weight down. And that's what you see a lot of that. So they do abuse it. We don't hear about it, but it is abused. I think because they don't see that it causes any impairment at this time, that may be a detrimental reason why they're doing it. But it's not good. We know, the brief 10 years that we have know that the health risks are obviously not good. So, I'll be around if you have any questions about any of anything else, but I'm going to turn it over to Michelle and her talk to you about mental health stuff.
Thank you, Dr. Cole. One thing I'll say about when they hold it in, Dr. Grisby talked about the jewel rooms being bathrooms. A lot of kids do this in the classroom right under the teacher's nose because they can hold it in so long that when they exhale, it doesn't create a vapor. So it can happen right in front of you in some cases. Our next presenter is Dr. Michelle Holcomb, received her doctorate from the University of Texas in San Antonio in counseling, education, and supervision, and is currently working as an assistant professor at Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio. Michelle received her Master's of Education in Counseling from the University of Houston. Go Cougs. They beat Ohio State last night, Mr. Klaus. So they play my dad's alma mater, Kentucky now on Fridays. So I had to get a shameless plug in. I'm nice here. And her Bachelor of Science from Angelo State University. In addition, Dr. Holcomb is the proud owner of Hill Country Intervention and Counseling, where she is a professional mental health therapist and interventionist, specializing in eating disorder, behavioral disorders, substance abuse disorders, process addiction, and sports performance issues. Dr. Holcomb is contracted with the University of Texas at San Antonio's athletic department, where she provides mental health services to athletes. Her current research interests include resiliency, eating disorders in collegiate athletes and sports performance. Throughout 20 years of professional therapist, Michelle has served on multiple advisory and executive boards at state and local levels, including the Texas Counseling Association, the South Texas Counseling Association, and the Texas Counselors for Social Justice. Dr. Michelle Holcomb.
Thank you very much. It's kind of hard to follow these two. They did a great job. I just want to thank all of you guys for being here. This is a very important topic, and I know everyone has their own individual reason for being here. Hopefully, we're able to answer all your questions and concerns. So let's just go ahead and get started with the mental health effects. All right, the reasons why teens use. They're uneducated on the dangers. They don't understand how dangerous it actually is. So that's one of the reasons. Friends are using it. Trying to fit in with their friends. They're bored and they want to escape. Oftentimes, teens, adults, use substances in order to escape their problems. It's a temporary escape, but nonetheless, it is an escape. And we all can admit that in a very temporary moment, you can't escape from that issue. However, we all know that eventually that problem becomes bigger and bigger and bigger because of the way that you cope with escaping. So, one of the things that I see in my practice a lot is, I have kids using substances, making choices and that sort of thing, and I ask them, why? Why did you do that? Well, we all know the science behind the frontal lobe and brain development and that sort of thing, so we can automatically assume that they don't have the decision-making skills that we do as adults, right? So we understand that. But they often say, I was just bored. I had nothing else to do. I was just bored. And so I thought, this might be a good idea. Whatever the behavior was that wasn't healthy for them fill in the blank, I was just bored, which I find to be really interesting. Do we want to overschedule our kids so they're not so bored? Well, maybe, if this is the reason, if these are the things that they're doing, but we definitely need to keep an eye on our children. So, teens are more likely to use e-cigarettes than cigarettes. And boys are more likely, 2 times more likely to use than girls. I think with everything, education is the key. I think when I talk to kids about substance use, they don't really understand what they're actually using when they use, for the most part. Now, I've had some very, very savvy, very highly intelligent kids that research everything before they use it, but they still have a curiosity to use. They're going to go ahead and use it, but they want to make sure they educate themselves first. Just in case they get the side effects, then they will call 911 or whatever the case may be. But it's very rare that I have an intelligent child like that try to look everything up and research it to begin with. Oftentimes it was just like, I just felt like it. Oop, I was just bored. My friends were doing it, so I thought, why not? That's what I typically see in my practice. So what do teens say? So when they interviewed teens, they asked the question, what is actually in an e-cigarette? And 66% of the responses said, and you can't see that at the bottom because my presentation cut it off, but they thought that it was just liquid, sweet liquid that was in it. 5% said marijuana, 13% nicotine. Some of them said they didn't have any idea, which is pretty much I'm bored and I don't know what I'm doing. I hear typically, and then other. As far as media's exposure is concerned, as you guys well know, we are bombarded with our media on commercials. That's why the Marlboro Man was taken off back in the day, because they felt like his, coolness of smoking that cigarette with a hat on and all that was influencing people to smoke cigarettes. And so we do know the effects of media and how powerful the media is. And so retail ads, internet ads, TV movie ads, newspapers, middle school students and high school students are bombarded with ads every single day. When it comes to using substances, when it comes to, the message that kids get that if you're having a bad day, you can just go and have a drink and you'll feel better. Or if you're having a bad day, go ahead and smoke. Or try to find a way to unwind. Go ahead and smoke some marijuana, it's fine. That's your way of unwinding, it's okay. Instead of the media advertising healthy coping strategies, we often hear of the unhealthy because it's a moneymaker. I think one of the things that I find, at least in the practice that I do and the work that I do, is we have a culture of passivity here in the United States of America. Oftentimes I hear youth tell their parents, well, other kids are doing it, and, in order for me to fit in and have friends, I need to be able to do this too, and, I'll make the decisions, I won't make the decision to go and completely use, but I'll just kind of do this because I really want to fit in, and oftentimes, I see parents going, okay, well, my child is socially disconnected, and they want to fit in, and so, it's okay. It is not okay. Adults caving into the everyone else is doing it, and I won't have friends unless you allow me to be a part of. And we can associate with that with technology, allowing your children to have technology before the age-appropriate time. All my friends have it. I won't be able to socially connect. Starting with that translates into all these other things that kids are using and dealing with. So, as he mentioned, I'm an interventionist. So one of the things that I do is I go into homes and do interventions with kids and adults that are using substances and need to go to treatment. And they go to treatment for a while. And one of the clients that I had, who's not even in the United States, so I can say this without giving them up, but we were at the table, we were actually in the middle of an intervention, trying to get this 17-year-old girl who had an eating disorder and a substance abuse disorder to go to treatment. And we're sitting at the table, and she pulls her jewel out, and she does her jewel. She's having a conversation with us, talking. She does the jewel. Parents are sitting there, they know it's a jewel. They're allowing it to happen at the table. And all of a sudden, she goes from having a clear conversation to, looking side-eyed at us. The amount of nicotine in that Juul affected her within 5 seconds. It was unbelievable to see, and of course, this is a girl that wasn't eating also, but it was crazy to see the effects immediately that she had from the amount of nicotine that was in the Juul. So allowing children to use it or ignoring it, allowing your teens to use, ignoring the fact that it's there. I think privacy is a really important thing in life, but I also think that as a parent, there are certain things that are not private, and using substances and dangerous behavior that can put your child in danger, your children don't have a right to that privacy. They just don't. The other issue that I think is a big issue is parents are using Juuls, parents are vaping and that sort of thing, and so therefore then it just does give your child consent to use it. Well, my parents do it, so I might as well do it. Even if you don't allow it and you use it, they'll still do it because you're doing it, and we do what our parents do oftentimes. So nicotine addiction. So in the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual that psychiatrists use to diagnose a myriad of disorders, we as counselors use the same manual. And so the tobacco use disorder, you must meet 2 of the criteria in the past 12 months. So there's 11 criteria here. And 2 of the criteria are super easy to meet. A great deal of time is spent on activities necessary to obtain the use of tobacco. Withdrawal symptoms, which is on the next slide. Tolerance. Persistent recurrent use despite awareness of physical or psychological struggles. Getting in the way of being successful in school, at work, at home. Those sorts of things. So all you need to do is meet 2 of the criteria in order to meet full diagnosis. So we're seeing a lot of people that have tobacco use disorder. So as far as the mental health effects are concerned, so, we all talk about the gateway drugs. People will argue, well, it's alcohol. Alcohol is the gateway drug to marijuana, and then marijuana is the gateway drug to everything else. People will argue that it's cigarettes. Cigarettes the gateway drug to alcohol, alcohol then to marijuana, and so forth and so on. But I believe, and this is just my opinion, that vaping is the gateway drug. It has changed. The Juul and vapes are the gateway drugs. Because again, you can use marijuana. You can do dabs in a vape. So it just opens up the door for teens and young children, older children and teens, to be okay with using the other things. One of the things that the other Dr. Holga mentioned was how you need to be able to build a tolerance. Once you build a tolerance for nicotine, you need more and more and more. Well, that's the whole idea of the gateway. You get bored with drinking and then you go to marijuana. You get bored with marijuana, you decide to use cocaine and, psychedelics and that sort of thing. But I think the Juul has become the gateway. Again, my opinion. Highly agitated and easily angered. I see that in withdrawal symptoms of my clients, but I also see that in people that are actively using as well. Kids are a little more edgy, a little more angry, and it may be because they're coming off of it, but they're feeding for it. They want it. And the second that they do it, they're able to have that immediate response of feeling calm and okay. But it's again that highly agitated, easily angered. If your children are having those symptoms, I would definitely look into maybe what's coming there. There's an increased risk for anxiety. I think initially the first effect of using nicotine or having a drink or whatever that may be can calm you down. But if you have a predisposition and you have a diagnosis of anxiety and you use these substances on top of that as a vape or a Juul or an ENDS, whatever you want to call it, it actually increases anxiety. I have had clients be so highly anxious from using nicotine that they become almost psychotic. That they look almost psychotic. The panic attack is so completely out of control, and in order for that nicotine to come out of their system, it takes days. These are kids that have a high predisposition for anxiety. It increases the risk of depression. such an interesting thing. I think people think, well, I'll just smoke some weed, or I'll just go and have a drink, and then I won't feel depressed anymore. Well, no, it's not necessarily the case. And over the long term, the depression actually increases from use. The anxiety actually increases from use. So it's a huge problem. Increased risk of relationship conflict. So if you can't get your substances, you're going to be highly agitated and irritated. You might say something rude to a friend or the person that you're dating, and then it's all a problem. Or your parents, if you're having high conflict with some of your teenagers, you might want to take a look at this. It could be other things, of course, but this could be part of it. That the increased conflict in family members, friendships, all of a sudden your child isn't friends with anyone when they had a good group of friends. You might want to look into that more. Decreased motivation. All they want to do is sit around and use, whatever the use is. It could be, again, marijuana is, demotivation syndrome is very common with marijuana, but it's also, however I can get the substance next, I'll forgo everything else that I've had, all my goals in life, whatever I need to do in life. I don't care, I just need my jewel. I just need this, I just need that. By the way, the girl that I was telling you guys about that actually we were doing the intervention, she did not go to treatment that time. So then I had to go back, and she actually ended up going to treatment. And so she had told us that she was using several other hardcore drugs. When she went into treatment, they had to detox her. And guess what they detoxed her for? And guess what had the biggest effect on her in her withdrawal symptoms? Nicotine. Between marijuana and cocaine and fentanyl and all the things she was using, nicotine was the hardest thing for her to come off of. Says a lot. And again, like I mentioned, possible psychotic symptoms, nicotine, synthetic marijuana, definitely the synthetic marijuana is so dangerous for children. So dangerous for teens and young adults. Synthetic marijuana, if used, can change your neurobiology for the rest of your life. You will not oftentimes think the same. There was a story, I had a friend who worked at Laurel Ridge Treatment Center, and there was a mom that decided she was going to go on a girls' weekend and try, have fun. And so she did, and she unfortunately was told to use, the wrong sort of marijuana. She went and did synthetic marijuana, and she ended up with a diagnosis of schizophrenia as a result. Drug-induced schizophrenia, and it was permanent. So we need to watch that in our children. Okay, I think we've already kind of gone over this, but one of the things for parents, if you're wanting to know what the lingo is for vaping, you can go to dreamsmoke.com, and there is a dictionary of everything you will ever want to know about what the current words and trends are for the different lingos associated with vaping. I thought that was a neat little tidbit. So I think the best preventative measure is for you guys to educate your children. And I mean children. Starting at a very, very young age, help them understand the effects of smoking, of vaping, of drugs, of substance use. It's very, very important. So by the time they become teenagers and they think they know everything, or they think you don't know anything, you've already laid the groundwork for them. And so the education piece is already there, and it will not go away. So when they're trying to make a decision, when it comes to peer pressure and being around their peers, then they're more likely going to make a different decision because you've provided the foundation and the education. Oftentimes people are like, well, how young is too young, and how much do we tell them? I think you need to tell them at an age-appropriate level what they need to know, but I also think it's never too young. It's never too young to talk about these things, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate, change the culture, and kind of create that for them, so when they have that foundation, they can go in and make the decisions that they need to make. And I think one of the greatest things that you can do with your children, and I would say starting in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, talking about peer pressure, role play with your children. If there's a television show where you saw, maybe peer pressure happening, use it as an example. What do you think you would do in that situation if you were that character in the television show? What do you think you would do? What do you think they should have done? And use different things, any opportunities you have in the moment, to be able to give them that little spill of what you think is appropriate. It's very important. I think being able to role play peer pressure starting in middle school, there are kids vaping and doing and drugging and all that in middle school. It's happening. It's happening in 5th grade in Boerne, Texas. So I think just the younger you can educate them at an age-appropriate level, the better off you are. All right, and so I think that's it on my part. Thank you very much.